Good afternoon, guys. I'm Priyanka here from Admit Card. So we are basically an overseas consultant based in Noida, and I have been working here now as a senior counselor. Regarding my profile, I have been into student counseling since a long time. To be very specific, I was associated with IDP and SIC as the overseas agencies, and we have dealt with many different destinations. But primarily, I have been dealing with Australia as a domain. And for now, we are going to discuss the very basic details of how Australia goes on, Australia's education system. Why is it the most preferred destination in the world in the English-speaking native language countries? Why is it is a most preferred destination today? How are people taking it internationally? Being a student, what are the do's and don'ts that we have to take care while traveling to Australia? How is the education system, the work culture, and probably Australia is an immigration country that attracts a huge number of international students all over the world. So, being an immigration country, we need to a little bit know about the culture and the history of Australia as a destination. So after United States and UK, one of the most preferred destination amongst international students in the English-speaking world is Australia. Uh, yes, it is because of its cultural diversity, um, friendly natives, and a very, very high quality of education. So Australia believes into that. Now, logically, why is it happening that Australia is so much focused into its education system? Now, being an established economy, Australia has its revenues, or Australia's main revenues comes from the education system. Therefore, when I talk about education system, I mean the universities and the colleges that are in Australia. So a huge number of revenues comes from these universities to the government. Therefore, the university will not take any sort of chance, or any sort of leniency would not be there in terms of the education that they provide. Therefore, Australia is a very, very focused destination when I talk about its quality of education. The quality of education is recognized not only in Australia, but it's recognized all over the world. Secondly, Australian education system is famous all over the world as it comes under AQF, that is Australian Qualifications Framework. Now, Australian qualification framework means that most of the courses which are highly demanded in the job market are well accredited with certain accredited bodies. Like if I talk about Masters of Accounting, or if I talk about Masters of Professional Accounting, that is under CPA, that is the CPA accredited program in Australia. Hence, what I want to make you guys understand is the fact that these accounting programs are accredited by an association called CPA, which is a regulatory body. Secondly, this CPA accredited program will enable you to become an accountant and work in Australia into a full-fledged manner. Therefore, this is just an example that I'm citing now. There are innumerable number of accredited bodies that accredits the courses in Australia. Hence, when I talk about the education system, it is a full-fledged, very well-proved education system that comes under AQF. Two bodies called ESOS, ESOS Act, and TEQSA are the regulatory bodies that actually governs all these educations. Also, it protects the international students from being exploited. Hence, Again, we need to understand that being an international student, our safety and security in terms of the environment, in terms of the university that we are going, in terms of any fraudulence, has to be protected. Therefore, Australia has brought into certain regulatory bodies and certain safety modules, which has always tried to protect the rights of international students as a whole. Now, coming back to the ranking of the universities in the world. Now, there are two such big rankings called QS ranking or the Times Higher Education, which has highly accredited the entire universities in Australia. Now, in terms of the ranking of the universities, they ranked top into top 100 or top 10. There are universities like University of Melbourne, University of Sydney, Australian National University, Monash, which comes under top ranking universities in terms of different kinds of subjects like business, business analytics, information system, or IT. Now, Australia also has something called Group of Eight, which is acclaimed to be the top eight universities in Australia. Now, these top eight universities that are accredited and they are acclaimed has received such an acclamation due to certain factors. First is the quality of education that they provide. Second, the employability rate, that is one of the most important factors for an international student. Third, it's research oriented programs. That means many of the universities, or if I can tell you that as a whole, if I see the number of universities running across in Australia, we have 43 universities, out of which 39 are public. Therefore, all these universities are much more research oriented. You have ample scope of doing a research program after your coursework studies, that's after your bachelor's and master's degree, which is sponsored at times by the university also. Now, depending on these three factors, primarily, it's about the quality of education, the employability, the research oriented modules of the university, or the initiative that have been taken by the university. We have huge number of we have huge number of universities which comes under a group of 8 forum, right? Secondly, when I talk about the course curriculum of how it is all about, if I talk about Australia's education system, primarily we have bachelor degree and master degrees, which are known as coursework degrees in Australia. Now, somewhere or the other, Australia follows the pattern of what India is doing right now. So we have a bachelor's degree, which is 3 years degree in India. Yes, and that 3 years degree at times gets extended when a student goes on taking an extended program, like he's taking a dual specialization of bachelor's of law with bachelor's of cybersecurity. Then the program gets extended to 4 years or 5 years. That is it. But generally, the bachelor's degree is years. After 3 years, you can either go for a master's degree or start working. That is known as the post-study work rights. That is a very, very interesting and attractive point for international students at this point of time. Now, generally, there is a trend amongst our students that we are more into our job pattern. So how do we work? Now, Australia has a post-study work rights of 2 years after every program. So basically, the idea is if you're going for a bachelor's degree of 3 years or 4 years, you get a stay back or post-study work right of working full-time for 2 years. Additionally, there are primarily we have four major locations in Australia, which is popular amongst international students. Like we have Melbourne, the most livable place in the world for international for lifestyle of a student. Secondly, we have Sydney, one of the most livable, expensive cities in the world. Third, we have Adelaide coming up, and we have Brisbane. Now, these four locations are primarily popular among international students, though the rest of the cities are coming up with different avenues and different universities with different job opportunities, whereas these universities and these locations are not yet popular among international students. Now, when I talk about a master's degree for 2 years, now again there's a twist here. If I talk about a master's degree, you generally have a master's degree for 1 to 2 years. That means certain programs would be there for 1 year, whereas some programs would be there for 1.5 year, and there are certain which are 2 years program. Now, as an international student, we need to understand that we need to secure our job and we need to secure our stay in Australia, which can be a long term plan for a student who is opting for Australia. Now, now going for a master's course, if I do not do a course for 2 years, or if I'm going for a course of masters and for that's for 1 year, I would not be entitled to get a stay back of 2 years. Therefore, it is mandate that we go for a program that is at least 2 years. Therefore, if I go for a bachelor degree of 3 years, or I go for a master's degree of 2 years, I can ascertain that I get a stay back of 2 years. Now again, when I talk about the post-study work rights, now when I talk about post-study work rights, now Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Perth, these are the 5 major areas or locations, what we say, are considered as those areas where after studies we get an additional stay back of 2 years. Except these 5 locations, all other locations in Australia are considered to be regional today. Therefore, when I talk about regional areas in Australia, we have very important informations and updates regarding what a regional area is. Now, a regional area does not mean that it is the remotest area of Australia. It means that the crowd, the population of these places are comparatively lower than what we have in Melbourne and Sydney. Now, again, as an international student, though from India or from other countries of the world, we are much more prone towards Melbourne and Sydney because of the fame that they carry. But very prominently, there are different kinds of opportunities which are also coming up in the regional areas. So, a regional area, according to the Australian government, are those areas which are less crowded or less populated, which has number of opportunities, and therefore the Australian government is now inviting prospective, I repeat my words, they should be prospective students, international students, who can go study and work or invest their time in these kind of places, which is considered as regional area. Now, working and studying in regional area gives you an additional benefit in from your long-term perspective. Now, when I talk about the long-term perspective, it's all about the PR-oriented decisions that we go on. Now, a PR depends upon different points. That depends on the age, that depends upon the qualification, that depends on the SOL list, the skill occupation list, that depends on the IELTS that we hold, the scores that we receive, and later it also depends upon a term called state sponsorship. Now, when a student goes to a regional area, the thumb rule is that when the student goes to a regional area and studies there for around 2 years, he gets a stay back of 2 years. Now, the new rule that is coming up, which is yet verbal, not yet documented, but probably by November 2019, it should come into a documented letter that anybody who goes into a regional area and goes for a particular course and stays there for 2 years as a stay back option or a post study work right, which was there already, now gets an additional benefit of 1 year more when you go to a regional area. That means 2 years you have invested for the course. Now after 2 years of a stay back, you get an additional 1 year of a stay back. That means you stay there in total for around 5 years. After 5 years, definitely your way towards a PR gets opened because there are points for state sponsorship, that is around 10 points. You get points for your SOL, for your occupation. You get points for your age. You get points for your qualification. Therefore, the regional areas are coming up with different new opportunities as declared by the Prime Minister of Australia. Now, the Prime Minister and the government as a whole is investing a huge amount of money into these regional sectors so that they can develop and bring it up. And that facility and that benefit can be well utilized by the international students. I have a question here, Saptarshi. Saptarshi, when I talk about University of Queensland is a top 8 university. That's a group of 8 university. So scholarships in Australia, not only in the group of 8, but it depends on upon every university, that universities in Australia is much more finicky about the scholarships, and that is dependent on academics. If you're academically strong, if you have a legitimate percentage in your latest qualification, definitely we can think about a proper scholarship that ranges from 15 to 25% for certain universities. Certain universities do give you a one-time scholarship. So University of Queensland definitely provides you scholarship, but for that we'll have to check your eligibility. And if you're eligible enough to apply for the scholarship, you are entitled with a scholarship during the offer letter, that that you get from the university. So I think that my answer was sufficient enough for Satoshi. Uh, Coming back to the next thing. Now, generally, there are students who are very tensed about how do we go about with the part-time opportunities in Australia, or how do we manage our living expenses. Now, the trend about Australia and the best part of the education system is that it allows international students to work during their studies. So if you are not disrupting your education, or if you are not disrupting your uh, course that you are undertaking in a particular university, and it is not being harmed by any X factor, you can definitely go for a part-time opportunity of 20 hours per week or 40 hours per fortnight. Therefore, it helps international students from two perspectives. First of all, every international student tries to manage his or her living expenses, and that we do with the help of part-time. Part-time, we can start working. Once we reach Australia, we cannot start working, but once we are enrolled into the university, we can start doing the part-time also. So the best part would be that when you are getting an offer letter, when you accept the offer and get your visa, you arrive in Australia few days prior to the orientation date, start pipelining your interviews, but you cannot work until you are enrolled into that university. So once you are enrolled, you start working into a part-time opportunity. And that part-time will not only help you minimize your living expenses or will minimize your budget, but that would also help you in getting a life learning experience. because the next thing that we're going to discuss today is the life learning experience or the employment opportunities in Australia that is huge in number, but that depends on several factors. And the thumb rule to get into a job in Australia is a very, very good networking. Now, when you network well, you start getting references. That references give you an extra edge towards your full-time opportunity. Now, how do you get a full-time opportunity? The first step towards your full-time opportunity would be a part-time opportunity. Now, with the help of a part-time opportunity, you start working. That helps you minimize your budget, and simultaneously it gives you a life learning experience from which you take your next step towards how can I improve my full-time opportunities, the opportunity that I'm having in Australia, how can I go ahead with those opportunities. So with the part-time opportunities, you understand that what are the loopholes or what are the different things that I can take care of when I talk about my job opportunities in Australia. So there are universities in Australia that helps you get a better employment opportunity. Now, how does an employment start? Now, when I talk about employment opportunity, it talks about your profile assessment. So that profile assessment will be based on your CV, your grooming, your interview preparation, and so on. So the universities have an independent employment cell that helps you get a part-time as well as a full-time opportunity. But the only thing that you have to do as a student is to show the proactiveness that you seek the university's support in getting a part-time as well as a full-time opportunity. CV, making of the CV, the grooming part, the interview part, all these opportunities would be definitely sufficed by the university to you, and you would be there to take it and then take it forward. So that is how the employment goes. I have a question from Isha again. Um, Now, Isha, to answer with your question, as we were talking about the employment opportunities in Australia, definitely there are certain fields which are highly demanded. But when I talk about journalism as a whole, I talk about a course that is inclusive of all many different fields. Like journalism can come into print media, it can be included in electronic media, it can talk about public relations, it can talk about advertising as well. So definitely PR, public relation, and advertising can be a very, very important aspect of the journalism course. If I talk about advertising manager or if I talk about the SOL list that is there in Australia, yes, advertising manager or PR manager, public relation manager, or advertising manager are included in the list, occupation list, wherein a student who does a journalism course and takes up an specialization of advertising or PR will definitely get the benefits of job opportunities. But as a whole, if I talk about journalism as a general field, it has avenues, but more particularly, advertising and PR has much more advantage than the general subjects. So a student who wants to go for journalism can take up advertising or can take up PR as a specialization, which will eventually help them to go ahead in their in their work career. So I believe I'm that the answer suffices your question. Uh, Again, coming back to one of the most important aspects, that what are how is the tuition fees, how is the budget for Australia goes, how does the tuition fees go about in Australia. So comparatively, if I see, the top 8 universities or the group of 8 universities in Australia has a comparatively higher edge on the tuition fees. So their fee starts from 18, 19 lakhs to 23 lakhs per annum. Apart from these group of 8 universities, we have decent average universities in Australia also, which provide similar courses. So any student, if any student, if I talk about any student who is actually going for a decent university and wants to do a course from a decent university, normally the course fees starts from 12, 13 lakhs to 16, 17 lakhs per annum. Now, as I again uh, discussed about the scholarship, that Australia is a country that is now being very, very, being very lucrative in terms of the scholarships as well, along the job opportunities. So, in terms of the scholarships, if the percentage is into a better condition, if I look at a very decent percentage from a decent university in India, definitely I can seek the university for a scholarship. After a scholarship, probably a 20% scholarship, up to a 25% scholarship. There are different kinds of scholarship like vice chancellor scholarship, dean scholarship, right? So there are different kinds of scholarship, merit scholarship, which is granted to international students based on their academic merit. So if I talk about all these things, then definitely my budget comes to around 12, 13 lakhs per annum. Like we have a university in Sydney, that is New South Wales, and the university is Macquarie University, which is one of the top ranking universities in the world and Australia. Now, Macquarie provides international students a very lucrative offer of 10,000 AUD scholarship per year. Now, if the fees was 18 lakhs or 17 lakhs per annum, after the scholarship is granted, it comes to around 13 lakhs per annum, which is a very huge, uh, scholarship. And therefore, the budget actually is into my like I can definitely arrange my budget. It comes under my affordability also. And if I see Macquarie's employability, they really come good in terms of employment. In bachelor's program, Macquarie has an advantage of giving internships to every single student who is going for a bachelor student, though that does not comply with the master's degree as well, because master's degree has different kinds of subjects. So in master's degree they are selective about the internships, but yet there are scope of internships as well in the master's degree. But for the bachelor's degree students, they have an embedded internship into every program that is there in the Macquarie University. Apart from that, if I talk about other universities, in Melbourne, we have decent universities like Deccan. We have universities like Laptrobe. We have universities like like Charles Sturt University in Sydney. We have Wollongong. Macquarie is one such. Top ranking universities, we have University of Sydney, University of New South Wales. Now, if I talk about Brisbane, we have University of Queensland. If I talk about decent universities in Brisbane, we have Gold Coast, we have Griffith, we have QUT. Similarly, in Adelaide, we have good number of courses, good number of universities like University of Adelaide, again a top 8 university. We have University of South Australia. So these are the different number of universities which provides diversification of courses in the university itself. So any student who is interested to apply, who is thinking about Australia, who wants to know more about the destination, that whether that destination would help you to reach your long-term goals or not, how do we do the application process? So we have a huge number of things to give you from Admit Card, right? We have a question again from Isha. Um, University of Queensland, University of Melbourne, Western Australia. Please suggest me the best for journalism. Now, if I see universities like Queensland, University of Melbourne, and Western Australia. Now, Isha, when I talk about universities, you have said about University of Queensland, that's in Brisbane, Melbourne, which is in the main CBD area of Melbourne. We have Western Australia, which is like Perth. Now, If I talk about avenues, if I talk about career, I think University of Melbourne would be a better option to you when I talk about journalism, because as the number of industries are more in Melbourne, so definitely for journalism, for advertising, and for PR, it would definitely be an extra edge to you. So I think University of Melbourne would be the can be the first choice. Second, I would suggest you Queensland, and third, I would suggest you Western Australia. Uh, Now, again, Saptarshi has a very important question that can RMIT be compared with UNSW? Okay. Now, that's an interesting question, Saptarshi. When I talk about RMIT, it's based in Melbourne. It's not under group of eight, but definitely it's a very good university in terms of different subjects. Secondly, you can, if I compare UNSW in terms of the ranking and in terms of the group of eight accreditation, definitely it serves as a better edge over and above RMIT. But there are two important things that we can take care. Now, food technology can be better, can is good in RMIT, it is good in UNSW also. It depends which location you want to apply, which what is your long term goal, what is a percentage, do you have any criteria for scholarships. So if these things can be can be discussed in detail, it would be easier for me to suggest you that which university would be better for you, because RMIT with a decent percentage can go ahead with a scholarship. But then if I talk about UNSW, as it is a top ranking university, so it is not very handy with the scholarships. Only students who has a very good percentage can go for UNSW. But definitely the quality of education would be better in terms of UNSW than RMIT. But again, RMIT is also worth spending that money and going to study. So I think you can take both the things into consideration. Both UNSW and RMIT can help you out if you do not have a location preference or a budget preference. Lohit, Lohit, we are basically today discussing about Australia. So regarding UK, definitely we can give you a call and we can discuss that in details. If you would like to ask anything about Australia, we are there to help you. I think as we are aware that Australia is an immigration country and it gives you a post study work right of 2 years minimum. So definitely Australia can be an option to you. And if you want to ask any question regarding your course or the university that you talk about, we can help you out. Especially, I see that you are looking for a MS in computer science. So, computer science, IT is one of the most lucrative options that we have in Australia. Courses like data science, Masters of IT, Masters of Business Analytics, Masters of Computer Science, even Masters of Computer Science will be accredited by ACS. So Australian Computer Society accredits the computer science program in major universities. And if you go into these universities, definitely you would not only secure a job, but your options towards PR also becomes very easy. So on that note, I believe if you are thinking of taking a second preference, or if you are looking forward to any other destination other than UK, which we can definitely help you. But if you want to look into any other option rather than UK, we are here to help you today, specifically Australia. So again, when I talk about Australia as a whole, the application process and how the entire process goes on for Australia. So, what we do is we try to give you a very transparent outlook of how things go, the best choice of course and university that we would offer you would be into a very transparent way. If I talk about the application process, we would first give you a list of documents that you need to send us, and accordingly we can start the application process for anybody who's interested in Australia. And for that we need to do a profile assessment in the initial stage, and then we can better tell you that which university, which course, or if you have a long-term goal, which location would be the best suit for you in terms of the Australian universities. Secondly, when I talk about the application process, Australia has a process of GTE, that is a genuine temporary entrant criteria, that is applicable to international students. Now, Australia as an economy, they definitely are looking forward to students who, in the initial stage, has a genuine interest to study, right? So that genuine interest to study can be assessed by them through the following ways. Now, few universities have a different GTE assessment to be done for international students. So they do your GTE assessment. They would ask your financials. They would ask you questions that you need to answer, and probably after assessing your financial capability and your genuine interest to study, what research have you done as a student to study in Australia, they would offer you an unconditional offer letter. Now, again, the offer letter or the application process can also start without an IELTS or any English proficiency course that you undertaken. If you have not done any of these courses or if not taken any of the test, still we can go ahead with the application process and process your application, and the university will take care of the academics and the work experience uh, that you have submitted, and they can assess your application and can give you a conditional offer letter, after which the conditions that are mentioned in the offer letter has to be met, and simultaneously you can resubmit the documents that the university seeks, and the final letter that comes to you is an unconditional offer letter. No university in Australia will ask you to make any sort of payment without the unconditional offer letter. So only after receiving the unconditional offer letter, you are entitled to pay the generally universities in Australia has one such mode, that is University of universities in Australia would give you the first semester fees has to be paid to the university. Some universities, like University of Melbourne, will give you an initial amount of supposedly 10,000 AUD, which you need to pay after accepting the offer of the particular university and deposit the amount into the university's account. After paying the initial deposit that you make for a particular university, you get or you receive an ECOE, electronic confirmation of enrollment, from the university. And that ECOE is one of the mandate documents that we need for applying for your student visa. So the student visa that you would apply from India would be subclass 500, which will be applicable to you, or which would be confined to the number of study years that you undertake. Supposingly your course is for 2 years, then definitely your the entire course duration is 2 years, so your study visa would also be for 2 years. Later, when I talk about post-study work rights that comes under subclass 485, you need to apply for a post-study visa, that is a temporary work visa, to work there in Australia. So this is the general way that the agencies make to make an application and to give a student the student visa. Now, one such important aspect that plays a very, very crucial role, not only in terms of the university application process, but also during the visa process, is the statement of purpose that every student has to write, provided the SOP has to detail about about some very important details like your introduction about yourself, your family background, your family income, your academic background, your work experience background, your internships or projects that you have undertaken, your career goal, why this university is chosen by you, why have you not gone to any other country but you have chosen for Australia, and what are your career goals, what are your visa conditions. So inclusive of all these salient points, you have to write an SOP which is important from the university point of view and from the High Commission's point of view, because there's a trend in the market that because of the improper writing of the SOP, the visas are getting rejected. So definitely we need to understand that the SOP has to be taken care very well. So well-proved SOP. Now again, how does admit card help you? Now when you talk about any application process, we start from scratch to your landing into Australia. Also, we would give you an extra aid over the SOP preparation. How do we edit the SOP for you? We have our own team that looks after the entire editing part, and that well-proved SOP will only be sent to the university, and later on the SOP after editing will go to the High Commission during the visa process. Now, I have another question. How to get PR in Australia? Now, that's a very tricky question that we have. Generally, being an immigration country, I understand students internationally would definitely require and would urge for a PR in Australia. But how do we go about with that? Now, PR in Australia is dependent on the skill occupation list that we have in Australia. Skill occupation list is not one type, it is a different, there are different kinds of SOL list altogether. We have a short-term SOL list, medium SOL list, and the long-term SOL list. Now, when I talk about PR, definitely there are three ways to get a PR. First is a relevancy of job. You do a Masters of Management that you have generally asked me. Finance is doing pretty good in Australia, but more than finance, it is accounting which is doing better. Though financial management, these kind of subjects are also doing good. So how can you go about it? If I talk about the SOL list, you'll have to identify that first of all, what is your goal? The first goal that you need to seek is the graduate employability, that is the temporary work visa. For the temporary work visa, and to apply for that or to get a relevant job, that is the first task that you need to take. So that depends on the short-term SOL list. So if the course that you are undertaking is in the short-term SOL list, definitely you can go for a temporary work visa that is sub plus 45. Now, when I talk about a PR and the long-term goals of how a PR can be achieved, first I told you that the relevancy of job is very much important. Secondly, the state sponsorship, or when I talk about the regional area that we were discussing a few minutes back, that regional area plays a crucial role today to support the international students. So in that way, if I talk about the regional areas, we have some very important updates about the regional area also. Now, there will be two new skilled regional provisional visa that would be introduced in the November 2019, that is coming November 2019, and the two new visas that would come up is first skilled employer sponsored regional provisional visa for people sponsored by an employer in regional area. That means if you are sponsored by a regional employer in Australia, you fall under that category, wherein you can apply for your PR later on easily. Second, skilled work regional provisional visa. Those are for those people who are nominated by a state or the territory government, or you are sponsored by an eligible family member to live and work in regional Australia. So these two are the new upcoming temporary visas that would be added under the section of regional Australia. Now, holders of the new skill regional provisional visa will need to live and work in regional Australia, and the visas will be granted for a number of time, right? Now, importantly, holders of the new skill regional provisional visas will be able to apply for a permanent visa or a permanent residency. And the permanent resident, the skill regional visa will commence in the year November 2022. Therefore, one more point to be added, that from 2021, whichever batch is will be getting their graduates, like whichever batch will be graduated from 2021 would be getting an extra or an additional year of 1 year. That would be an additional benefit in the regional areas, which will also enable you to get the skilled work regional provisional visa. Now, importantly, to be eligible for permanent residence, holders of the new skilled regional provisional visa will need to demonstrate that they have lived and worked in regional Australia while holding on the new skilled regional provisional visa. That means the meaning of these sentences are that if you go to a regional area, you study for 2 years probably, or and get a additional and you get a stay back of 2 years, additional benefit you get for more, for 1 year more. So total you stay there for 5 years. It means that you're not only staying in Australia, but you're also working in Australia. That, and you are under skilled regional provisional visa. So all these points together will give you an extra edge towards getting a PR easily in regional area. And that is what the High Commission or the Australian government is talking all about. They are promoting into a very different way to all these regional areas who are not yet promoted, but definitely from this year they are taking huge initiatives and they're investing huge amount of money for bringing up new IT industries, financial industries into these areas, wherein our students can go study into a good university, work there for a certain period of time, come under skilled regional provisional visa, and later on can apply for a PR. So getting a PR means that your occupation has to be listed in the PR list. And for the PR thing to happen or to apply for a PR, your occupation list has your course that you undertake or the job that you are doing has to be in the skill occupation list, that is the long term and the medium occupation list, which will enable you to get a PR. I hope my answer is again sufficing your questions. So again, the okay, now when I was talking about your question, you have also asked about Masters of Management. Now, when I talk about management consulting is or business consulting are one of those two profiles that is listed under the SOL list. That is the short term SOL list, which you can definitely think of pursuing, because that SOL list which will eventually lead you to a long term goal of getting a PR also. I hope I'm able to give you the answer that you are that you're putting forward. Now, again, when I talk about regional areas, so definitely whoever wants to study in Australia, probably somebody who has already known about or who are already familiar with locations like Melbourne and Sydney. Definitely, these are good places to study and work. But then also, apart from the Melbourne and Sydney, you can also look into different kinds of other areas that would be, much more beneficial in terms if you are having a long-term goal. Then, if you do not have a long-term goal as such, you can definitely move to Melbourne and Sydney also, do a course, get a stay back of 2 years, and then come back. Because anyways, your master's degree and the international experience that you hold in Australia would something that would help you to actually get an international exposure. Come back to India. Once you are back, you have an extra edge over your peers in India, because Indian employers also would not only look into your overseas qualification, they would be much more interested into your international exposure or the experience that you would hold from Australia. So definitely it's a very, very lucrative and a very good decision. uh, I have one more question from Pulkit. How about data science from UNISA? My brother is going in July from Master of Data Science from UNISA. Great. So as I told you, even my students are there in UNISA, and as a university is concerned, University of South Australia are are famous for many of the programs. One such program is your data science, definitely, because University of South Australia has a perfect combination of subjects and modules that a data scientist has to have. So definitely the application and the process that is undertaken is a very strict process. So that means that the university will not take any student for the particular course. You need to be actually very good to get into an admission into UNISA. And therefore, if I talk about his future perspective, Pulkit, he has taken a very right decision of choosing UNISA over other universities. And as we were already discussing about the long-term goals, if anyways your brother has a long-term goal of settling down in Australia, I think UNISA would be the right choice, because Adelaide is an upcoming location for international students, not only from the point of IT or from the course perspective, from the PR also. One more additional information that I would like to give Pulkit is, for IT, the Prime Minister is now investing a huge amount of money in the regional areas. One such department where they are investing a huge amount of money is IT. So it's a very good news for all data scientists, for business analytics professional, for IT professionals as a whole. Whoever wants to go to Adelaide, I think that would be the right choice and the right course that you have taken forward. And probably in some time you have to, you'll understand that how your decision today has to helped to give you a better life in Adelaide. Provided there are certain tips from the day one. You have to be very, very proactive in terms of the part-time opportunities. You need to be very active in terms of internships and projects, because data science or business analytics would inculcate a lot of internships that can be paid at times also. Now that depends upon the student again, if you can go and avail that paid internship. Secondly, when I talk about your full-time opportunity also, try to get as many networks you have, depending on your seniors, depending on your peers, your part-time opportunities where you're working. Try getting as many references that you can, so that that part-time can eventually help you to get a full-time opportunity in Adelaide. Yes, and definitely Adelaide is much more beneficial from a different perspective of budget also. So it is cheaper than Sydney and Melbourne. So again, you would save a lot of money. Probably the money that you would that you are getting from your living, from your part time, would eventually help you to save some amount of money as well. So I wish you all the best. I hope your brother's journey towards Australia and especially UNISA would be a fruitful one. And you need any support from Australia, you can directly contact us. We'll be here to help you out. Thank you, Pulkit. Uh, Last but not the least, we have covered a number of points. Now, some I would just like to give you a glimpse of the number of courses that are very much popular today. We talk about courses like Masters of IT. We talk about courses like Master of Data Science. One more course that's coming up in a huge way, that is data science. Masters of Information System with a specialization of business analytics or data science can be one of the most lucrative options you have for IT people. You have Masters of International Business. One more course that is into a huge demand in Australia for now is Masters of Business. Why and how does Masters of Business differ from what we have in India? Now, Masters of Business in India would be an equivalent program like MBA with four specialization, right? So, on that note, we can have Masters of Business in Australia with 8 to 9 specializations. Now, 8 to 9 specializations mean that supposingly you are an IT student, but you do not want to be into the core data science or core technical field. You want to attain certain knowledge of business module because your long term goal is to work for an organization and come into a management profile. Hence, how can you stick into your field also, and how can you do a course in business also? The right choice would be Master of Business with 9 specializations or 8 specialization, where you can take business analytics, IT, or networking as your specializations also. So in that way, Masters of Business for management people, for business for people, for engineers. I mean the IT engineers. I mean the mechanical engineers. Whoever wants to come into a business profile and also want to stick into their domain can think about Masters of Business. One of the most popular program that we have in Australia would be Masters of International Business. We have Masters of Management, again with a huge number of specializations. We have Masters of Education, Masters of Teaching. Now, again, when I talk about the SOL list or when I talk about the skill occupation list, there's a huge demand of teaching professionals and health professionals also, apart from accounting and IT. We need, or Australia needs, a huge number of teaching professionals that can come into education and teaching, provided the student, if they want to go for a teaching background, has to come from a teaching experience. The profile should be holistically good enough. Along with the IELTS requirement, that should be at least 7.5 module with no less than 7. So, for all practicing subjects or for all practicable subjects, Australia would require a high band on IELTS. That is 7.5 would be required for teaching profiles also. For education, provided you go for education program, the IELTS would be somehow less with 7 to 6.5 individually. We have public health, one of the most lucrative and most demanded subject in Australia for now. Public health, healthcare administration, hospital care administration, hospital management are those courses which can be opted by any student who has done his MBBS from here, who has done his BDS from here, because we will not be able to give you an admission directly into the practicable field that you are into. Probably we will be able to give you a programs in these kind of things, because you are not permitted to directly go and start working as a doctor or a surgeon or a dentist, because you need to have your licensing from Australia. But to get into a job market in Australia in the similar profile, you can do public health, you can do hospital care, you can do hospital management, which will give you similar profile jobs. And later on, you can think of getting yourself prepared for the licensing of the subject that you are intent to, and take it forward. With the public health that we are doing, right? We have another course like information technology, architecture, construction management. Again, a very very good prosperous location for people who are actually going for construction management and architecture, because architects and construction management are there in the PR list. So definitely those will be a lucrative job opportunity for students who have done their civil engineering from India, who are going for construction management. So these courses are definitely leading them to a PR later on. We have Masters of Design. You have so in bachelors you have Bachelors of Business, Commerce, Nursing, Food Science and Technology, coming up with new avenues. Computer Science, Bachelors of Science with huge number of specializations, Bachelor of Law, Juris Doctor, Bachelors of Cybersecurity with Bachelors of Law dual specialization, Bachelors of Architecture. These are the few I could mention today. These are a few mentioned courses that Australia has a huge demand for. Therefore, any student who wants to get into these courses, who wants to get their profile assessed, can directly contact us into our numbers, or can directly email me, and I would be there to help you out with all the services that we can from AdmitCard. Um, Now again, we have another question for Pratyush Singh, that is aerospace good in Australia. Yes, definitely. Aerospace will be good in Australia. You have courses in UNSW also, which you can think. For aerospace, UNSW is a good university that we can think of. So if you want to get into a detailed analysis, or if you want to get a detailed picture of the subject that you want to take, or you'll have to just tell me your profile well, and I can suggest you that whether that course would be, or whether we can go ahead with the course in Australia or not, right? We have a uh, Now, when I talk about food technology, Saptarshi, I have a question from you also. That can we do a PhD from Australia? Definitely. But the process for Australia for a PhD would not be the same like we have in our master's degree. For PhD, definitely after you complete your master's from Ireland, you can eventually you can look for a university first, as we have discussed about Queensland, RMIT, UNSW, for mentioning about these three for now. You can shortlist the university first, and also you can understand that these particular universities engage with food technology, and they have a research program, or they have research So what can you do is, you can go to the website directly of the university and go and start looking for a supervisor, not a faculty. You have to look for a supervisor from the university and directly write to them via email that you are a student who has done a master's degree from Ireland and now is interested to do his PhD. So Saptarshi, in Australia, we only do not have a course called PhD. We also have a course called Masters by Research. So even if your profile is not eligible for PhD in the initial time, you can also go for a program called Masters by Research that also gives you a stayback of 3 years in Australia. So Masters by Research also is a similar profile. You have to get your profile assessed by the supervisor. You need to write them about your work. So I would definitely encourage you that while you are in your studies in Ireland, start publishing papers. Start doing a research on the subject matter that you are studying, because that would only help you to seek a PhD or a master's by research approval from the university. So when you have done a work, you can write your proposal, you can write what you have done, you can write about a paper that you have published, and you can seek the university that I am interested in this kind of a course because I've done this work in my previous background. And now, with your permission, if I can go ahead with a research program in your university, so then it is on the discretion of the university supervisor to accept or to decline or deny the offer that you have made. So probably if you can get a green signal from them, definitely we can start the application process. And in the meantime, you can also apply for fellowships and scholarships from the same universities. I hope I'm clear with this also. So anything that you would ask, because we are going to, end up the the session for today. We are also thinking that we would be coming again with different kinds of new things coming up in Australia, with different information that we can give you. Uh, any questions that you have, any profile assessment which you want to do, which you think can be, is tough for you to understand, any confusion regarding courses, the choice of course, the university choice, the other things that we can help you out, do reach out to us. You can email me or you can call us in our official number, and we can then take it forward from there. So thank you so much. Thank you for all your cooperation. Thank you for being such a good audience. Thank you for listening and being so patient. Thank you once again. Thanks.